It's very late or very early for some of you. Thank you for turning on the recording, whoever did that. So we have an hour and a half. We have a fairly ambitious agenda, but we're going to start by, first of all, acknowledging that we've had a transition in co-chairs for IGAD. And so we previously had Patricia Bertin from Embrapa, and she has moved on to other things. And we are very fortunate to have had Deborah Drucker, who is also from Embrapa, join us. And so we want to thank Patricia for her great assistance through the years, and very much welcome, a warm welcome to Deborah, who's already been working very hard even before she was officially a co-chair. So thank you, Deborah, for joining us, and just want to acknowledge that. The basic outline, yes, I can see the slides, although I can also see the browser window. I'm not sure if that's what you're intending to do, Emma, but it's okay, we can see them. There might be another screen though that may be better to share. Let's
sorry for that.
A little bit of a chance to get those.
Yes, just give me a second. Okay. But just go ahead, the outline. So
okay, so the outline for the day is, for the session, is that we will be providing you first with an update on our activities since we last met 6 months ago or so. And that will be those of us who are chairs talking about the work that we've done on behalf of IGAD during the interim. Then we will have a 45-minute section of the session today talking about this new community of practice, first introducing it, providing an opportunity for any of you to ask questions. We may have questions to ask of you and also of the RDA organizers. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion, depending on how things go, about what our work plan should be. And so we have 45 minutes for that discussion, and I'd like that to be fairly informal, and that's an opportunity for any of you to share your questions or thoughts or comments. And as part of that discussion about our community of practice, we'll have some polling questions using menti.com. So just a heads up that we will have poll questions so that you can express some of your thoughts and interests to us using polling, in addition to being able to just unmute and talk to us. And then we'll end with something that we usually do during IGAD sessions at RDA, and we will provide an opportunity for our working groups to share what they've been doing. And I think in this case, neither of our working group leaders are with us today, and so we'll be presenting first a video from Meta Devar on the working group that she is developing, and with a group of folks who probably are here on this call, and then the capacity development working group, we have a slide that I believe Emma will present. So that's our outline. So if we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we organized since the last RDA plenary is a webinar series that we called Coffee Breaks, because the idea was that they would be shorter than a long webinar. So Emma, were you going to share about this?
Sure, yes, with pleasure. Hello, everybody. Yes, these are a series of webinars that were meant to facilitate the knowledge sharing during this year among the members of the COP, and at that time, the interest group. So we made a call, and I think that was about May this year, and we received several proposals. All of them were very good. I think that there were only a couple of them that they were not fitting that well with the topics that we are covering in IGAD. But eventually we had about 9 different webinars, and we had 12 different presenters. And these webinars, what we call coffee breaks, which are maximum 30 minutes, took place between 16th of June to 27th of October. And we had representatives from France, Germany, Spain, Georgia, United Kingdom, Czech Republic, Mexico, and Canada. So for those that would like to watch some of these webinars, everything was recorded and everything is available through the RDA IGAD YouTube channel. And we had about 1,000 people attending the webinars as well. And yes, so if you want to know more about what is the most trendy topics right now in IGAD, I would recommend you to go to the channel and to look at what we have there that was published with regards to these webinar series. Just a small overview to acknowledge all the efforts that all the colleagues from IGAD did, the members in supporting these coffee breaks. We had topics like ontologies and thesaurus for agri-food data annotation and interoperability. We had also agricultural market dynamics based on data evidence, digital agriculture and open data systems, particularly in Georgia. We also had new, not so new anymore, but F1000 research presenting how they would support IGAD through their open peer review systems. And as well, we had more semantics and data innovation. They were also had an interesting actually presentation from Mexico about agrobiodiversity. We also had something related to grassroots and 2 Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data that has been already presented in the past in the IGAD face-to-face events, but this time we had the chance to bring the Pavel to our online webinars. And said that, this is a wrap up. If you have any thought about presenting something in IGAD, we are open these webinars again next year. And but just email us in case that there is anything in particular that you would like to see or whether you would like to present something to the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma. So now I'm going to share a little bit about the March workshop that we participated in on behalf of IGAD. It was called Towards Responsible Plant Data Linkage, Global Challenges for Food Security and Governance. And this was essentially organized by University of Exeter, and our colleagues there set up 4 different sessions that took place over 4 weeks. So each Friday we had a session with speakers on a particular angle on this general topic. And the speakers were asked to prepare papers to be published in an edited volume. And we submitted our paper and then revised it based on comments from the conference organizers. And it will be reviewed and published in an edited volume that has not yet been announced. So I'm not sure when that will come out, but I just wanted to make you aware of it so that if you're interested in what we shared and would like to share it with your colleagues, you can be watching out for that paper. So next slide, I'll just review quickly what we talked about in that workshop. So primarily, next slide, please. We reviewed the community of practice idea. So we talked a bit about the background of the interest group and how we're transitioning to a community of practice. And we provided roughly 3 general areas where we think the community of practice could begin to make a difference. One of those areas was the care principles, making sure that our communities, basically a community called ESIP, Earth Science Information Partners, primarily in the US, did a lot of knowledge sharing about the care principles from RDA, and in turn we can make sure that IGAD disseminates information and keeps the discussion going about the care principles within our agricultural research data networks. So basically including fair data, but doing it in a way that is ethical and provides the authority needed by indigenous populations to govern their own data. All right, next slide. We talked a little bit about IGAD as a way to connect worlds having to do with biodiversity, more general biodiversity, with agro-biodiversity. And here, Donald Hoburn, I know, was in the audience. He may remember this, that in another network outside of RDA, the Biodiversity Information Standards Network, we had several symposia about agro-biodiversity and highlighted some needs that we have to bring our 2 communities together to better capture the data having to do with crop wild relatives. And so there's some references there to that, but that's an opportunity IGAD has to keep that conversation going and broadly disseminate across our networks. Next slide. And then finally, Deborah described the efforts that they've had in Brazil to promote fair data principles within Brazil by setting up an implementation network. And so I won't go into details about all of this. You can read more about it when the paper comes out. But it was a great opportunity to get our word out to other plant data practitioners and to be part of that general discussion. All right, so next slide. And then so the last update that we have for you is about an RDA proposal that we were involved in, thanks to Hillary's invitation. And I'm going to hand this over now to Deborah to describe our part in this proposal. Deborah?
Yes, thanks, Cindy. Please let me know if you hear me all right, because my connection is a little unstable today. But,
you're good. We can hear you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And one of the other issues we have been involved in the last few months were on this proposal that's led by RDA and CODATA. And it's a great example on how we are moving on towards the community of practice concept. So we identified common interest on pollination data standard between our partners. So our part in this proposal is regarding moving forward adoption and development of further standards before besides the one that already exists regarding interaction data and more specific on plant pollination data. So it was a huge effort to bring together different partners. So far, we are connecting 15 partners in South and North America, Europe and Africa, and we do know there are other initiatives in other continents that can be also connected further. So even though the proposal doesn't get funded, we do believe that this subject is of interest of many of our partners. So we intend to go further with this initiative anyway. Of course, if it's funded, it's even better. So stay tuned, because we are going to talk about more that in the next few months. Thank you. I'll hand over to Cindy again.
All right, thank you. I guess maybe I'd like to pause now just to see if anybody in the audience has any questions about any of the activities that we just reported on. Feel free to type a question into the chat or unmute and speak up. We have a good number of participants, so I think it's not too large, not too small. So if you want to ask a question, this would be a good time. You can also raise your hand and I'll recognize you. But we have some time to answer questions if you have any on any of that. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions, so we'll just go ahead and keep moving. So we're now at the heart of the session where we will discuss the process that we've been going on to change from being an interest group, the interest group on agricultural data, to become a community of practice. And I guess the first thing to note is that because we will no longer be an interest group, we need to change the name of the group, because IGAD starts with interest groups. So we've decided to rename ourselves with the same acronym. And so our new name is Improving Global Agricultural Data. And so now we're a community of practice. So we're IGAD Community of Practice. So what we'll do is do a brief introduction, which for some of you may be a repeat of what you've heard us say in the past about our plans for this community of practice. We'll talk a little bit about the status of the proposal, and then we'll have some discussion, including some poll questions at menti.com. So next slide, please. So for those of you who are new, you may not be aware, but RDA has recently developed the concept of a new kind of group in RDA. So the existing groups were birds of a feather, interest groups, and working groups, and we now have a different kind of group called a community of practice, which is intended to be a disciplinary or domain specific in focus, but in particular, these are expected to have a critical mass. So they're large groups. They are expected to be at least 10 countries, so very international. They need to be able to provide letters of support that provide evidence that the community of practice is going to provide value. And they need to be groups that will have already had experience creating at least one working group and endorsing recommendations from that working group. And so we were in the discussions as these new community of practice concepts were being developed. And then we were the first proposal to be submitted to be a new community of practice. And so if you can go to the next slide. We argued that IGAD has been very successful to date as an interest group, in part because we know that our agricultural research domain is actually not just something that we talk about in IGAD, but is overlapping with a lot of other related scientists and sciences, so that we have quite a lot of ground to cover, but that keeps things very lively. And we have a lot of diversity within the group and can learn a lot from each other. Our wheat data interoperability working group succeeded because they brought together people from pre-existing communities that existed before the working group. And so that suggests an approach to tap into the success of these other vital communities. And we want to do that with the community of practice. And we want to, this is a typo on this slide, I'm realizing, we want to promote the adoption of other community outcomes within IGAD. We tend not to reinvent the wheel within IGAD. We want to look at the success and build on the success of our other community partners. And so IGAD is a way that we can promote adoption of the recommendations of others. Next slide. So this is just a slide basically indicating that we have a large amount of participation. At the time of the slide, it was over 260 registered members. We had a virtual meeting in 2020 that had more than 350 people participating with presenters from 14 different countries. But we have experienced logistical challenges bringing the Global South to RDA meetings. When back in the days when we were actually traveling physically, it was not so easy for everybody to participate in RDA. We still thought that there's a challenge to promote not only IGAD outputs, but RDA outputs as well, and to engage more with some of these other national, regional, and international organizations. So as an interest group, we've been very successful, but we thought that moving officially to community of practice status would help us address some of these challenges. All right, next slide.
If I might jump in, Cindy,
sure,
one
please.
of the things that I would like to mention is that in the coffee breaks we had quite a lot of people attending from Africa in Asia. Particularly, we had interesting discussions with people from Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya. So definitely the third point on this slide becomes very important for us if we want to bring the Global South, because these virtual online events are helping us to really break that barrier in a way. Sorry for that.
No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so the vision that we put forth in the proposal and that we've been talking about for the last 6 months or so is that IGAD essentially is a hub that can bring together the best of communities outside of RDA and bring them into RDA, and also communicate from RDA out to these outside communities. And so the 5 communities that we're talking about on this slide include GODAN, the CGIAR groupings, the Open Geospatial Consortium, the International Society of Precision Agriculture, and Ag Gateway. And these are just examples. These are the ones that we've started with. We know that there's more networks out there. One of the things that we'll ask as we get further into this discussion is what other groups we should be talking to and we should bring into the fold. But the idea is that individuals from these outside communities or networks can be members of IGAD and serve as liaisons. And so they can bring their good ideas, their experiences from their own larger networks outside of RDA. They can bring their knowledge and experience into IGAD. And as well, they can, with the support of our community practice, engage with other parts of RDA, other working groups within RDA, and bring the good ideas from RDA back out to their networks to promote even more dissemination. So the idea here is that not everybody in these external networks are going to come to RDA or come to the community of practice, but hopefully through this hub and spoke model, we can do our best to promote the ideas that we talk about in IGAD out to the larger community. All right, so the next slide. Emma, I think you were going to talk a little bit as an example of how this will work.
Right, so we had members of these communities that are in the previous slide in here. I think it was the last plenary. And as a result of that, because the idea in that session was about discussing how we could potentially collaborate to make sure that their networks are aware about the RDA recommendations. So as let's say as a follow-up, we were invited to the farmer-centric on farm experimentation, the OFE 2021, to talk about how to engage between the community that belongs to the International Society of Precision Agriculture and RDA, using IGAD as a kind of bridge between both communities. This is an example that we put here just for you to know. It's very recent, but not to say, I mean, also to highlight that GODAN has been supporting many of the online capacity development activities we have had, and Ag Gateway has also engaged in many of them. So let's say that there is some work in progress that goes in the direction of what Cindy was mentioning that has happened in 2022, and we hope to reinforce in 2021, sorry, and we hope to reinforce in 2022. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emma. So I just wanted to review where this proposal is in the process. So we submitted the community of practice proposal back in July. There was a public review period that went from August to September. I'm not actually sure how many comments were received, but then the proposal also went to the Technical Advisory Board of RDA, the TAB, and we got suggestions for improvement back from them in October. We just learned a couple of weeks ago that the proposal has been endorsed by the RDA Council. So I think that means that officially we are now a community of practice. But because the Technical Advisory Board had asked us to make some suggested improvements in the proposal, we did those revisions, and we've made those the revised proposal available again to the RDA community just last month. And so Devika Madali is our liaison with the TAB. It looks like she's not on today, but we're very glad about that because she's been with us from the early days of IGAD. And so she's very familiar with our work and what we hope to do. And we've already had one very good conversation with her about what we can do going forward. Okay, so next slide, please. I'm going to pause. Oh, one more thing. So we are now recognized and endorsed, and this URL down there can take you to the new community of practice page for IGAD. And so if you're interested, you can see the proposal, the letters of support that were provided by some of our community network partners. and you can read everything here. We want to be as transparent as possible about this process. We do have some questions about this, and we can get to that in the next section when we open this up for more general questions. And maybe because we have some RDA representation joining us today, we can talk about that. But if you can go to the next slide, I want to pause first and ask if anybody has any questions or comments. We actually do have some time, so we can, yes, Leslie has her hand raised. Go ahead, Leslie.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I'm still getting situated. It's the morning here. Thanks for sharing all this. I'm a little bit new to this community, and I'm on that webpage you were just showing with the proposal. I was just interested, what kind of improvements were suggested? Like, what were the types of things that the tab noted that could be improvements in the proposal?
That's a great question, and I'm going to ask my co-chairs maybe to take that one. We do things as a group, and I think just off of the top of the head, what comes to my mind is that they wanted us to be a little bit more clear about the work plan or the roadmap, and we really wanted to consult with you, our community, in this session before we really finalize a more specific work plan. But Emma or Deborah, would you like to answer that?
I can start, Deborah, if you want to jump in. In fact, in the proposal that we submitted, Leslie, there was a section that was really a bit weak, which were objectives, because at that point in time, we were thinking that this is not an interest group, this is not a working group, this is COP. COP has certain synergies and needs to go together with the community, right? So depending on what the community is asking us to do, we can facilitate the process. But we were a little bit too general. So actually, the only big comment that we received from TAP was that they wanted us to specify a little bit more what were the objectives as such, which it was a point, I mean, a good point. And we tried to expand this. Now is with them. So if there is anything else that we need to provide feedback about, we will. That's not a problem at all. But essentially, since we are the first COP, we are also a little bit like, okay, so how much we can commit to something specific that nobody knows how this is going to get, how this is going to be developed. So we wanted to go a little bit, as I said, with the flow and to learn from the experience, and then to see how to proceed. But let's say that, in my opinion, and then I bring the floor to Deborah, I think that IGAD has already worked as COP for many years. This is just a matter of putting the right name to what IGAD is, because what the main objective, at least since I'm involved in IGAD, was to make sure that people could share knowledge, could come and talk in the face-to-face workshops, to make sure that whatever is going on in the institutions, in the food and agricultural sector, they can find a platform, neutral platform, where to come and to talk and to tell to the others what they are doing with regards to anything about food and agricultural data. So we expanded it a little bit. I don't know, it's not public yet, but it's going to be soon very public. We can then distribute it through the mailing lists. And looking forward to your feedback as well, Leslie. This is always very good to know, and etc. Deborah, if you want to check.
Yes, I would add that we are very thankful for the evaluation, because it made us discuss and think more about how we can work better as a community of practice. And today we structured these questions also thinking about that, on how we can be a community of practice that really captures what the different actors want us to be, and at the same time not being vague about what we are planning on doing. So it was very helpful for us to have these comments. And we do hope to have more input from you, Leslie, and the others here to move forward with these future plans.
Thank you.
May I say something? I know that there are people in the audience. I can identify one lady I know very well that they are managing COPs in their networks. So it would be very interesting for us if during this session, you can also share your experience about what challenges are you facing when you are trying to engage with the members of your COPs and how to promote good practices, et cetera, et cetera. At least I see one person, not sure about the others, but please feel free to unmute yourselves and to talk or to bring some messages through the chat. We are looking forward to know more about your experiences.
Yes, on that note, Emma, actually, I would like to ask Leslie, can you come back onto the screen and explain what your background is? Because I know you from another network and I want to make sure that others know where you're coming from.
Yes, thank you. I kind of crashed into this party here this morning. My name is Leslie Shee, and I'm at the U.S. Geological Survey. My role there is a coordinator of a community of practice there called Community of Data for Data Integration. We'll talk more about it at the plenary coming up today. And we have tons of challenges on engagement and roadmaps and planning. I think we might get a little bit into that during the plenary, but I think probably you all know one of the biggest issues is the lack of time that people have to put into any sort of new activity that's beyond their list of things that they need to do. So making sure that the community of practice activities really help them in what they're trying to do already, which is what I kind of see here being discussed, is one of the best ways to get engagement. I have all sorts of questions about how you became so global and how you built that global network, because getting people to commit the time and then feel comfortable enough to share their ideas and their questions without having that little barrier of, oh, I don't want to talk in front of all of these people. I think that could be the main one.
Good point.
Yeah, very good point. Thanks, Leslie. I can say that certainly RDA has helped us be so global, but the other thing is that we have tended to organize sessions before or maybe after, I can't remember if there have been any after, but full day sessions just for us before or after RDA. And they've been good sized groups where everybody's very comfortable sharing, and it's maybe less, although there's presentations, it's also less formal perhaps than a formal conference would be. And so I think that has helped a lot. But I also will say, and Emma and Deborah, I'm sure would agree, that the ability to do these webinar series at different times of day and virtually has brought in a lot of people who otherwise would not be able to share with us. And so, and the coffee break idea was to do it shorter than a typical webinar, just because we know people are busy. So Leslie, you're absolutely right that making time for these sorts of activities is really difficult, but that's partly why we shortened the typical webinar time, because we all have so much to do during the day.
Yeah,
any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Maybe, can I say something?
Hi.
Sure.
Hello, lurking in the background. But I could, so I don't know, I said before we actually started the session, I'm not sure the plenary that Leslie alluded to is a discussion about communities of practice, of course, and it's ESIP, Leslie's CDI and RDA, and of course our community of practice is yours, is the concrete example I can give. But so we will talk a little bit more in general of that, but I will be dipping into the IGAD examples. But I think that I'd like to say that to sort of underline a little what Cynthia's last words were, I think IGAD has been a lighthouse in RDA. So because it's a volunteer network and because we facilitate what we can, but it's really up to chairs who share. And I think you're very much a model from that perspective as well. You share the work across, the different chairs. You're very active. You organize things that you can clearly, I think, manage, but it's still a very, very high volume of activity. I think IGAD is our busiest and most, if you like, productive group, but it's a lot to do, I think, with the drive that you have and these using different mechanisms and that idea that you've had for a long time. And I think you still might be almost unique for that, which was when we were all meeting in person, to take advantage of that and bring people together. And from the RDA perspective, that has brought many, many more people to RDA as a result of it. So it's, very beneficial for the Research Data Alliance too. So I just wanted to say that sort of in your favor, but also as examples that we would see from IGAD. And they also, the timeline for approval for this community of practice has been long, also because you are the first one. And I think we ourselves are experimenting. So you're our guinea pig, I'm afraid.
Thank you so much for all of that, Hillary. I think we should move on to our first poll question, which I've been watching, and people have already gone to the webpage and started to share their thoughts. So let me share the results. I'm going to take over the screen sharing and go to this page where the results are starting to come up. But please, if you haven't typed in some words, what I'm hoping to do here is to brainstorm about what those important concepts are to those of you who've shown up at this session. So, we need to get a sense of what our audience is interested in, whether that's specific to agricultural data or just general concepts having to do with research data in general. So please share with us what words or phrases you think are most important to you, and that will help us as we think about what this community of practice is and what it can support. So looks like we've had 3 people now submit some words. I know we have, I think, let's see, how many people do we have in our session? We'll keep going. Go ahead, just any words you can think of. If they're agriculturally specific, that might be useful too. If you're part of the ag community. But we did recognize, and Leslie, I'll say that you say you're crashing our session. We sort of expected that this session would be one that people would stop by and just to check out what we're doing, even if they haven't been a member of IGAD in the past. So great, thanks. Lots of great words here. Nothing particularly surprising to me, except absence data. I can guess who's put that in just because I know the audience. Digital inclusion, I like that one. Interoperability, of course, is very big. Okay, so I think we've had 9 people respond. Emma, can you tell me how many other people we have out there? I don't know if you can see the number of people here in the audience.
People that could still answer, you mean?
Yes, how many people could still answer?
Yeah, I think it's almost everybody has done it because we are 3 and we had 13 people and 9 people replied. So yeah, we are there.
Okay, then I'll go to the next question. And I hope that you can read these. I'll read them out loud to you. But one of the things that we did in our proposal was we said that we have a lot of different objectives that we could cover in any given year. And we may want to narrow that down and choose some specific areas of focus for 2022 for next year. And so that includes things like workforce development, which might be data skills training or hiring strategies. Semantics, we've had a working group on semantics. Data ownership and privacy, or data sovereignty, the idea of those care principles and making sure that we're inclusive in how we provide support to people. Data and metadata standards are an obvious topic, especially for those interested in interoperability. Infrastructure projects. Actually, how do we take RDA recommendations and build them into our infrastructure? So with that, I'll just let the voting continue and we'll see how it goes. So far it looks like data and metadata standards and semantics are rising to the top. All right, we've had 7 people voted, 8 people. And so I think we'll move on. Oh, 9 people. Okay, that's how many we got last time. So let's give you 30 more seconds if you haven't voted, if you want to vote. And then we're going to switch back to the slides, Emma. So I'm going to need to ask you to share your screen again.
Cindy, it would be interesting to know which other area.
Oh yeah, actually, now I see that there's an other. Could somebody, if you chose other, could you share what you said? Hannah, was that you?
Hi,
Did
Cindy.
you say other?
Yeah.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I've been lately working at CSC with the concept of data visiting, and I was kind of interesting if it's relevant for the agricultural data, because there's lots of work done between private companies and research institutes, and this is an interesting topic. So maybe it fits in with the data ownerships and privacy topic, but
what did you call it?
Slightly be a different thing. So I'm not sure.
What did you call it? Data
visiting. So there should be platforms where researchers can analyze data without actually being able to download it or see the sensitive parts of the data.
I haven't heard that term before, but I have heard of that concept, and it's very interesting. And yes, I would say that's part of the data ownership and privacy discussion. So that's great to know, and I'd love to hear more about it. And okay, so with that, I think we'll go back to the slides, does anybody else have anything else they'd like to share about their vote there? Whether you have any strong feelings about any of those topics, because next we're going to go into some more detailed discussion about the options for our work plan.
Yeah, if there is any, I would say suggestion that you can use also the chat box, and if some ideas come to you while Cindy is reading the discussion for roadmap.
Right. So this first bullet is basically what are the key areas we should prioritize. So that's basically the a deeper discussion of what you just took the poll question on. We can, in addition to the topics that were in that poll question, we can focus on knowledge sharing, on training, on engaging with other communities of practice. Thanks, Elizabeth, for coming. Always good to see Elizabeth Arnaud joining us, so thanks. So what are your thoughts? IGAD could be just as a series of sharing from all of us to each other about what we're doing, but we could more proactively provide some training. We could focus on engaging with the communities of practice that you represent, many of you. Leslie wants to know what type of training we've heard request for in our community.
Yeah, I can jump in if you like, Cindy.
Please.
Or in principle, the training that we have received from the most active RDA members is more about not so much training, but to get informed about what the other organizations are doing. The word training is coming more from the Global South. So there is a need to develop some skills And in some cases, people are asking for support on that. The main issue with this kind of activities is that we need budget. We would need some funding to really do a MOOC, a massive open online course. We have some out there that we have done over the years in IGAD, for instance, the open data in agriculture and nutrition and some others, but it's more, there is a different audience, let's say. Yeah. Over to you.
So Hillary is asking if we've ever teamed up with the RDA or CoData schools on data science and data stewardship, and we don't think we have we?
Not as such. We should do that, but one of the very active members in IGAD is a person that is working in Godan and CoData, Sushit, which he has been promoting these schools over the years. But here, there you got a point, Hillary, because of a lack of time, and also because. Particularly in my case, I don't know how much time would require from our side to bring some aspects about food and agriculture would be needed. So, but definitely, this is something that belongs to what we were discussing, Cindy, Deborah, and myself, about activities that could be planned in 2022. And to be added to the roadmap, so at least to look into it, let's say, whether we can then move it forward with the limited resources we have, but also because we are spending quite a lot of time is another thing. But definitely, CoData is there. We have all the contacts. We know the people. We should start talking to them. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, just because. Sorry, just to say, because they were originally just physical schools, which did require an awful lot more, if you like, resources even from your side. But with COVID have but they have a full virtual course, which I think was also more accessible. And they are like one of their main objectives is to support LMICs in the Global South. So it ties very close with, the IGAD objectives. But you're right about what would be the resources required to actually, input the agricultural data aspect on that. But that could be a side conversation we could have to see if we could help from RDA for that piece. Yeah.
Well, that would be great also because of the pollination use case study that Deborah was mentioning. We got in contact with the agricultural, let's say, task force in CoData. And so we started to know each other. So this could be also an occasion to think about other kind of collaboration beyond let's say, the case study. That would be helpful. Yeah, I take note.
Yeah, so the other ideas that this brings up for me is if we pop down a little bit to the middle of the slide, the idea of doing a newcomer survey to find out people who are coming, just in general, people coming to RDA, if they have an interest in agriculture, can they connect with us so that we can help them find their relevant working groups? But we could also ask them, as well as the rest of our membership, what kind of training you would like to have and how specific it needs to be to your agricultural context. So I know in the United States, I've been involved in developing a strategy for doing training within USDA for our researchers. And so we're developing curricula that is both general on one hand for data science, but also probably more tailored to the agricultural context. And so we could, as part of the survey that we might want to do to newcomers, ask about training. And so I'm just going to move to that then. So the other thing that we had proposed is that we could offer from IGAD introductory sessions to RDA, so that as we bring in new members to our community who are new to RDA, we can help orient them, maybe even between RDA sessions, so that we can make sure that they are able to better take advantage of what RDA offers. Sometimes a big organization like RDA can be very off-putting or it's unclear where to start. And during a conference, especially a virtual conference, that may not be the best time to start learning about it. We could potentially do that in between RDA plenaries. I see Dimitri has a comment that suggests that a survey not be limited to RDA members and newcomers, but also beyond. So the group of people who are coming to our coffee breaks. I totally agree. I think these coffee break webinars could be an opportunity to reach beyond our existing members and reach new people. So good suggestion, Dimitri. Thank you. Any other ideas there? Again, community of practice is really about supporting the community, which means we have to find out what they need and what they could use from us to help support them. So introductory sessions and a survey. One thing we're trying to figure out is who would help us develop that survey and how would we deliver it. If we're delivering it to people that IGAD doesn't yet know about, that's tricky. That would require collaboration with the RDA technical infrastructure, because as people sign up for the website, we would need to somehow be able to communicate with them. That's a little tricky with privacy issues. But Dimitri's suggestion about getting, sending surveys to people who come to our webinars, that might actually be another great approach. Leslie says getting short testimonials from existing members to help communicate can be low commitment but high return. Sure. So we could basically get those active IGAD members to just say a little something about why IGAD is providing value for them. That would be great. And that actually transitions to the next bullet point, which is we need to prepare a plan for communication. So if we want to be more intentional about how we are communicating with not only our own membership, but prospective members or other people both inside and outside of RDA, what would that communication plan look like? We've thought about developing a video. And so again, we would need people who were interested in being part of that video. I like Leslie's suggestion about testimonial. That would work really well in a video. And then how can we develop that communication plan to ensure participation from the Global South? So any ideas, especially from those of you who have done this kind of work before? Do you have a communication plan that we could use as a model? Hillary, I don't know if RDA has some resources that could help us put together this kind of plan tailored to our community.
Yeah, I think each case, we don't have a standard one or anything, but I think we have resources. So we have a call coming out next year, early next year, which is dedicated to communities of practice in RDA,
Okay.
Of which there is one. So we need to use that call to the best of its ability. And that could be one of the ways in which we could facilitate it, maybe there could be different types of expertise that could help. You need someone to help with the comms. Definitely inside of RDA, we don't have anything we can hand over to you, but I think we might find the resources to help. Yeah, early next week.
I think that one of the elements that could be very useful is to know what tools we could use. So for instance, we are making use of YouTube right now and also your Twitter account. But we were thinking about whether it would be a good idea to have a newsletter time to time focusing on agriculture. So if you have a tool that can be used for sending newsletters to our IGAD members or something like that could be. So just to know what is the spectrum of tools available in RDA that could support this communication plan development. Yeah.
Well, definitely so our web platform as it is at the moment does facilitate the creation of special groups, mailing lists, that we can target for regions or for particular. So we could set one up with the agricultural data people. There's not a problem with GDPR in that one because they're already members. So we transfer them in and you can't see their things. And then we have the RDA tool, newsletter tool. We are, you may have seen, we're looking for a new web developer, or we have a bid open for a new web platform, which we hope will be a little bit more easy to use. And bearing in mind things like that, where we would like to facilitate more use of the platform and offer more tools with it. But the newsletter, as is at the moment, we can facilitate that. We can also facilitate, somebody mentioned, I think, was it you, Cynthia, said, how would we get the people who sign up to make sure that'd be a bit more manual, but we can definitely help them join the groups. And then, yeah, I mean, we don't really use much beyond Twitter thing. We could get a bit more innovative ourselves in that. There is a series, by the way, of podcasts being defined, which we thought would be a nice idea too. And we do have a graphic designer that we can use every now and then that might be useful if you'd like, maybe now at the outset, to create a suite of things that could be IGAD, you know, to kind of brand your community of practice. That might be a nice thing to do, to make it, you know, if you don't have something like that, and create a different set of tools, images and different things for your Twitter, for your PowerPoints, the whole works.
That is interesting, definitely.
Yeah, thanks for all of that. Okay, so there's a couple more things to talk about that we will want to hear from you or your colleagues. And one of these has to do with interest groups and working groups. You know, one of our objectives will be to support those and allow those to form and to make sure that they're successful, although we're not necessarily responsible for their outputs. That's the idea, is that we can help them emerge from the community, and we can help make sure that their recommendations get disseminated across the community of practice. But, you know, what other needs are there for interest groups or working groups that are relevant to IGAD, and what other groups within RDA should we be collaborating with as we tackle some of the topics that we've discussed? So, for example, Hannah was talking about what she called data visiting, and which has to do with providing access to private data in a way that you can get value from it, do research with it without compromising the privacy or the ownership of that data. So is there an RDA group that's already doing that sort of discussion or work? I'm not sure if there are, but I know there's other groups that may be relevant to us that we should make sure we engage with. And so I'm open to any suggestions that you have.
It could be also a topic of how to collaborate between private sector and government or funded research university or research institute, public institutes, but I don't really know how to, and I don't also know RDA groups that well, but it's a topic that should be addressed somewhere.
Sure. I'll actually say I know that ESIP has a public-private collaboration working group, but I don't know, does RDA have something like that? Yeah, this is where our role can be as a concierge service to try to find out or figure out if that's a gap. And if it is a gap, maybe we can see if there's a lot of activity in agriculture with respect to this, because there is such a big industry, but there's also lots of university and academic and nonprofit and government work happening. So that might be an interesting idea to promote, see if anybody in our community would like to take that up and run with it. And then there's another bullet here about what other groups outside of RDA should we be engaging with? And I'm going to leave that question for now because it's in the polls. So I think unless we have any other comments or questions about our roadmap or our work plan, we can move to the last couple of poll questions, which will help us. So I'm going to, just as a technical point, the free version of Mentimeter only allows 2 slides, and so I am not yet a paid member, so I had to switch. So there's a new code for the next slides, so you can see it here. 922885. So you'll have to probably back out of the previous slides, restart, and put the new code in. And hopefully you can have a chance to see that. Let me share my screen.
That's another one we can help you with. We have Mentimeter accounts, Zoom accounts.
Good to know.
Canva
you know,
accounts.
I will.
I'll have to make
Good.
a list.
Right. Am I in the right one? Sorry, I need to make sure I have the right control here. Are you seeing a slide?
Yes.
For part 2, okay. And then let me just make sure. So you should be able to enter any organization, other community of practice groups, or other networks that we should reach out to make sure that they're aware of IGAD. Not seeing any results yet, so I'm hoping that somebody is submitting, or if there's a problem submitting, please let me know.
Yeah, so just to mention, so we mean IGAD and RDA, right? So kind of more global. So also recommendations from RDA that could be.
Sure, we could take recommended RDA groups in here as well. This is basically to help us make sure that we're not just inviting our own friends and family. We want to be responsive to the community. And if you know other organizations, I don't know if Leslie is still with us. We should probably put ESIP on this list, for example. And those of you who are here, you may be familiar with other groups. So nobody's responding as far as oh, ESIP is on there. Okay, thank you.
Well, following a little bit what Hillary said, definitely CODATA. We didn't target CODATA.
Right. I actually am thinking a few that I would like to add here, but I'm not in the same screen. So, okay, generically RDA organizational members and affiliates. Anything specific that you can think of would be really helpful so that we can start to do that outreach. CODATA, thank you. Donald Hoburn, who was here earlier and has left, I met him through Tadwig. Actually, I met Hannah that way as well, and Elizabeth Arnaud. So I would put TDWG on here, which is the Biodiversity Information Standards Group that does engage with other parts of RDA, but I think there's a good reason to reach out more to the Tadwig community for agrobiodiversity. And we're also interested in any regional networks that you may be familiar with in your part of the world, because that's the other thing that IGAD can do, which is broaden participation and connect up those more, either national or local groups with what's happening on the international scene. So any specific examples of those would be useful. Okay, we've had 5 responses. Looks like we should probably move on to the next slide. So thank you for that. Early career group. Okay, we should look and see if that actually could be a gap. It may be that that's something that RDA needs to create for early career folks. Okay, I'm going to switch to the next slide, and this is our final poll question, and the question is, how would you like to participate in IGAD? And so there are a number of options here that sort of relate to these ideas that we talked about that could be part of our work plan. And so although we don't have a lot of people still left in the session, it would be interesting to know if there's any of these areas where you would like to participate. And we're not actually keeping track of who's responding here. So don't worry, we won't hold you to this. Just give us a sense right now of what you're thinking about as you think of how you would like to participate. Okay, we have sharing information with another COP or network. That would be great. Any other thoughts on how you might want to contribute? And feel free to choose other, and we can talk about what you think you would like to do. For example, just attending webinars. I didn't make a specific answer for that, but that could be a way to participate as well.
Right, and if I may jump in, these organized
Sure.
webinars could be also facilitate a webinar. Sometimes we have a bunch of people that are supporting us doing some facilitation time to time, but because of the time zones, it's always a challenge. So if any of you would like to support us facilitating time to time or saying, yes, we can contact you, that would be very useful.
Well, the good news is we have people who would like to be that sort of liaison to share information back and forth between our community of practice and others. We have somebody who is willing to give a webinar. That'd be great.
About this webinar would be about the person that proposed that could unmute himself or herself and let us know. That would be interesting for the next coffee breaks.
Yep. So if you provided that answer, can you share what you might want to talk about?
I'm pretty sure that it's going to be super interesting, so don't be shy.
It wasn't actually my answer, but I was thinking that what we've been doing with this during this pandemic is that it's been quite handy to organizing webinars where we can kind of combine two different projects or networks and invite other networks as audience. So if we could do this kind of exchange and offer maybe project webinars to be invited to have this community of practice audience there. For example, we have more generic topics like semantic interoperability of research data in general, then it'd be good to kind of have a bigger audience and maybe provoke a suitable discussion that would be beneficial for the project as well.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's about bringing together almost the hub and spoke idea that these networks may have different topic areas, but similar concepts that they're interested in, and we can learn from them, and then enlarge the audience for all of the webinars for those. Dimitri says about INRAE's data repository and the coming French National Repository. That's great. So that would be a great webinar topic to talk about the infrastructure that's being developed in France about research data repositories. I think that's great. Okay, so I think we should close the polling and move on to our next agenda topic. Thank you again for all your participation. And if you could show your slides again, Emma. Thanks. So I'll just say with this slide that the idea of creating new or adding new working groups and having the IGAD community of practice facilitate that and help the work of that group reach out to these broader networks. So the newest working group that is not yet official, but is definitely in development, is the crop management data interoperability work group. You can see some of the working groups that we know exist and that we would like to engage with already there surrounding the RDA IGAD hub. But this new one is one that has been in the works for a little while, that Meta Devar has gathered a group of people together to be more general. Oh, and then on this slide, basically showing the interaction to share information both into and out of the RDA community of practice. So Emma, do you want to go ahead and start the video?
Right, confirm that you can hear the video, okay? Otherwise I have to reshare the screen.
Mm-hmm. Cannot hear anything.
No, it takes a while because there's a side.
Hi, everybody. My name is
Yeah,
Meda
good.
Devare, and I am a Senior Research Fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute, and I also lead the Organize module of CGIAR's Platform for Big Data in Agriculture. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I've included a picture of myself so you see who I am, what I look like. And I'm here to talk to you about some work we've been doing under IGAD on crop management data interoperability. This is not just myself, but a larger group of people. So who is the team that's involved? There's a lot of people from a variety of different institutions, but particularly helpful have been Céline Aubert, who's been helping me manage this work, and also Ima, Cindy, and Deborah, who you probably know are very much involved in leading IGAD efforts. I wanted to launch in by talking about why we're doing this work. The idea here is to improve the harmonization of crop management data, and of course that will hopefully enable the wider interpretation and aggregation for us to all of us really to be able to reuse data and data pools effectively to understand what that data means, what it's trying to tell us. What is the kind of data that we're talking about when we talk about crop management data? Here we are expecting to sort of touch on experimental factors, environmental descriptors, agronomic management practices, and a lot of other contextual agricultural data. What is the issue we're trying to address? Well, I think we all know that substantial amounts of resources have been invested in trying to get to common protocols and standards, including on ontologies and common controlled vocabularies. But the issue is that there's been a proliferation of the standards themselves, the classic, example, and that often leads to concept duplication, and so it leads to problems for users. They don't really understand what term to use and why. So we're trying to figure out, is there a way that we can address this effectively? Can we make it easier for users to adhere to standards, to use them, and to adhere to them? What are some of the expected outcomes of this work? Well, we'd like to improve cross-mappings, first of all, of interoperability standards that pertain to crop management data. And we'd like to do this through wide community engagement, if at all possible, because otherwise it doesn't really get anywhere. We'd like to promote the wider adoption of interoperability standards. We'd like to try to get to the point where discovery of these data and access to them becomes a lot easier, as does the ability to aggregate data and to apply data science techniques, including things like machine learning. If possible, we'd like to have some use cases to demonstrate the value of using crop management interoperability standards. So that's sort of a quick view of what we're trying to do with this work. What have we done so far? Well, we've worked as a team to articulate some of the needs and gaps. We've come up with a problem statement. We've identified some of the key outcomes that I just presented to you. We have some milestones and associated deliverables with the timeframes for them. We've drafted a plan of work, and we've sort of identified what we call sort of a heavy lifters group to help carry most of do most of the heavy lifting. That's obvious. But we also have a group of people as validators who we hope can help us, once we have a lot of this work done, validate what we've done and help us fill in the gaps. And Finally, we've drafted and administered a survey to try and gauge the capabilities and the needs across a wide range of sort of stakeholders. We've got not a really great set of responses. I would have hoped for more, but that's where you guys come in. That's why we're here to talk to you. We've got about 45 responses. We've performed some initial analysis on the data, but we hope to do better with this. So how do you get involved? Well, first of all, just get involved. Contact one of us. I've included just my email there, but you can certainly reach out to Ima, Cindy, or Deborah. They will lead you to one of us. And you can send the survey to data managers, data scientists, researchers, ontologists that you know of. And I've included the survey link there. So please do help us get involved, provide feedback. Thanks very much. If there are any questions, again, you have my email. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Thanks.
Okay, that was great. Emma, you were going to go ahead?
No, I simply had the feeling like your image disappeared. So for a second, so I was just wondering whether you were alive.
I'm back.
Okay.
So we will send that survey link around a bit more to see if we can get more responses to that. And we're also working with Meta to get the working group plan submitted to RDA so that it can be formally recognized as an official working group. But sounds like they've got a great start and have some really good plans, and definitely there's a need for this. So excited to hear about the progress there. And then on the next slide, I think we have a report out from the capacity working group. You can get to the next slide, right? Capacity development working group. And Emma, were you going to share about this?
I will, absolutely. About the crop data interpretability working group, just to say that any of you would be potentially interested, or you know that a person would be interested, we are organizing a meeting in 2 weeks' time with those that were in one of the slides that Meda presented. So there is an opportunity to meet all those that are going to be part of this potential working group in a Zoom call very soon. But said that, yes, I'm here on behalf of those that work in the capacity development for agriculture data working group. This was set up a couple of years ago. And while they were working on this working group and they were developing materials, etc., from the IGAD chair perspective, we realized that actually could not be a working group only delivering specific outcome or recommendation. We had to bring the working, so that the capacity development element into the IGAD core work. And this is the reason why Cindy also showed several times that we are talking about training, cap dev, capacity development, knowledge sharing, etc. So we spoke with, at that time, I think it was Debbie Kamadali taking care of this working group. And we agreed that all the work that they achieved during the first, I think it was about the first year, was packed as a resource kit, and in a way that there is a recommendation from the working group is an overview about free training resources in the area of agricultural data management. And there is a description about these resources that could be of interest to the RDA community, and is available from the link that you see. There are two people that are focal points for this recommendation as well. For those that participate in the IGAD's online activities, you might know Sushit from Godan. He's one of the chairs, and there was also a person from FAO taking care of it. So yeah, there is this working group finished, but there is work in progress. After this working group, there is IGAD that continues working on capacity development and became part of the main core activities of that so-called now community of practice. Over to you, Cindy and Deborah.
All right, thank you, Emma. So we have on our last slide here the 2 links to both our new community of practice page on the RDA website, as well as our old interest group page, which has so many historical resources. We are hoping to work with RDA to make sure that we don't lose those, but we do need to sort of figure out how to move forward with this transition so that we can smoothly keep the community together, but transition to that new group page. So for now, we have 2 different links to share with you, and we do have some time. So I'm curious if anybody has any good wrap-up thoughts, whether it's our chairs, Emma or Deborah, or any of our attendees, what you would like to, what have you learned today that you didn't know before, or what you think we need to keep in mind as we move forward that we might not be thinking of. So any thoughts?
Well, I can jump in just as a chair
Sure.
of the IGAD COP. I think that this is going to be a great opportunity for the sector where we are related, food and agricultural research data. And we hope really to see this communication plan to go ahead. Doesn't have to be finalized or to be a complete work communication plan. What we are aiming is to make sure that we can include the requirements, the comments, the suggestions that are coming from the COP into the communication plan, considering the resources we have, which are limited. I think that Cindy, Deborah, and myself, we are really committing quite a lot of time currently. And we are also looking for more support as the core chairs. But slowly, the idea is that we are keeping moving. As IGAD is this, we are always keeping moving, doing things that can be, or we think that could be of interest. And we are also, I would say as well that three of us, we are also looking for challenges. So if you have any suggestion that goes beyond to what Cindy was presenting along the slides, we are also happy to look into these and to learn from the experiences you might have from other COPs or even your interest in your organization. So.
Yes, and adding to that, I'm just going to reinforce what Emma just said, that your input is really welcome. It's important for us. Even though you are watching this as a recording, please contact us and we will make sure to address any comments and also to engage anyone who's willing to dedicate more energy and proposing interest groups and working groups and anything you can think of. So you are mostly welcome. And also, I was just wondering a small point regarding these 2 web pages that we have now. It must, there is probably a way not for newcomers to go to the COP instead of the interest groups. It's something you need to not allow people to enter IGAD and direct as an interest group and direct to the community of practice, just for not to forget about that. And well, thank you all very much.
This is going to go into your homework, Hilary, to help us to make sure that people are not getting lost with these pages.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think I know we can do it, but we just need to remember. So
Yep. This is part of what happens when you're the first one. You realize, oh, right, we have mailing lists, we have web pages, we have to make sure not to lose that.
Yeah, that's very important. We need to keep the legacy. We've done a few of these before, and maybe not as big as yours, but we'll find a way. We'll find a way.
All right, and I guess unless anybody else has anything to share, I might give Hilary the last word to do one more plug for the plenary session, because it sounds like it's highly relevant to this group, and we all want to make sure to be supportive there.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for that opportunity, though I have to thank, it's Leslie, and who I think had to leave. But we gave this, so you know, this plenary is, I'll be saying it at the top of the hour in my opening, but we gave, this is the first time we've actually done it all of ourselves, fully global, fully virtual. So it's a test and experiment, but we thought we have a wonderful family of organizational members. And we asked our organizational members, would they like to organize the plenary or panel discussion sessions? And Leslie put together the one that's coming up next, which is facilitating active communities of practice to address data challenges. So Susan from ESIP, myself and Leslie will discuss and talk about that. So of course, as I said, I'll be referring to IGAD many, many times, as you are our prime example. But yeah, so that's at 20 past the hour with 20 minutes of Hillary and welcome before that.
Okay, sounds
60 minutes
wonderful.
Together. Yeah. But thank you very much. Really, we're very grateful to you, and please do reach out and ask. It's not, we've plenty on our plate at the moment, but we are very, that's what our job is. So I've taken some notes, but please remind me of the shopping list that we need to fulfill.
All right, well, I guess with that, I will thank everybody who attended today's session. And if you're listening to the recording, thank you for making it all the way to the end. And we hope to see you at a future IGAD event. And we'll make sure that you're signed up to get our announcements and our communication when we get our act together on that. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of RDA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.